right, y'all, we are back, ready for some more baking. Today, I'm really excited. We're doing like super British Christmas baking, and this is probably gonna come out after Christmas, or maybe, I don't know, the week of. We'll see what happens. But I'm really excited. I'm making mince pies today. I'm using like a couple of different recipes to make this because I wanted to do like Paul Hollywood's because, you know, British Bake Off, I'm a fan. So we're gonna do Paul Hollywood's recipe, but his recipe just says throw in mincemeat, which is great if you live in England and there's plenty of mincemeat options. I live in the US right now, so there's like hardly any options for mincemeat. And the other problem with mincemeat is there's usually like animal fat, usually beef fat in the mincemeat. So if you don't know what mincemeat is, it's now like chopped dried fruit of sorts. Sometimes there's nuts in there, sometimes there's other things. But it originated from like actual meat pies, and they would, I don't know a lot about British history, let's be real, but I just learned this on British Bake Off. They would take like meat and like store it and preserve it long term in these pies kind of thing. They'd use the fat to make it preserve and it would last longer. I don't know. Anyway, they started adding fruit to the pies to make it taste better, and then slowly it's grown into like a fruit-based pie. But that's why it's called mincemeat, is because it was originally with meat. And it's really hard to find like jarred stuff that doesn't have beef fat of some kind in it. So I'm just making my own version today. I found this recipe online. I'll drop it in the links below. And we're just gonna throw this together. I'm not gonna like record the whole time I'm letting this bubble, but it should be pretty easy. And today I wanted to talk about the ways in which we hold ourselves back. And usually it's based on fear. And there are three major fears that I see in most of my clients and the people I work with when it comes to like what's stopping them from getting after their goals. 2021 starting, I'm a big fan of like setting goals, setting New Year's resolutions, but I also love setting goals all the time. So I like to set them the beginning of the week, the beginning of the month, the beginning of the year. So in order to actually get after the things we want, we've got to move fear out of the way. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is the three major fears that I see in most people I work with, and then how we can move through these. And I'm just going to give some like basic tools. This is something I really break down more deeply in my upcoming group program, which is called Free to Rebel. And it's all about like embracing your wild side, letting the fears of all the things we're talking about today stop holding you back. And it's an 8-week group program. I'll talk about it more at the end. It's super freaking awesome. Just finished round 1 of that program, and I am in love, and I can't wait to launch it again. Okay, so this is actually really easy because I didn't want to have you guys watch me like measure things and chop things and pour things. It was a ton of work before this video, but pretty much we've got like a bunch of mixed fruit. So there's different kinds of mixed raisins in here. I did regular raisins, golden raisins, currants. I also did some dried cranberries and some dried cherries. So that's all gonna go in this recipe. And yeah, it's pretty much, it's really easy. All the ingredients just go into a pot and you cook it. So I'm just gonna start throwing things into the pot as I tell you what they are. Okay, cool. So we've got all of our lovely dried fruit I was just telling you about. I'm tossing that in here. And while we're doing this, while I'm walking you through the ingredients, I want you to think about some of the big goals you have for your life, or ideas, or things that you've been like thinking about doing that you haven't gotten started, or that you keep stopping yourself from doing. So it might be like starting a business, it might be traveling the world, it might be asking for a promotion at work, like whatever it is that you really want, but you seem like you keep holding yourself back from. I want you to start thinking about what that looks like in your life. Okay, I'm throwing in some candied mixed peel, which I just like made really quickly before this video. So they're probably not cooked all the way, but I figure they'll cook some more in the mix and they'll cook some more in the pie. So it's fine, right? It's totally fine. Okay, so just throwing these in here, and it says you can skip it, but I was trying to be as authentic as I could be with this video. So anyway, so I'm throwing that in here. This is a grated apple, so I peeled it, cored it, and then grated it. So this is gonna go in here. Yum, yum, yum. So thinking about things that hold you back, some of the things that used to hold me back was just like honestly having honest conversations. Like it used to just freak me out so much to like share my opinions, share my truth, and I just wouldn't because I was scared people would judge me or whatever. That was like a big thing I would hold myself back from. I've got almost a cup of brown sugar going in here. Just, it's very sweet. It's very sweet and spicy. I like it. Trying to think other things I would hold myself back from. You know, honestly, when I first started traveling, I joined a travel program because I had said my whole life I wanted to travel, and then I would make a million excuses. Anyway, so like I would always say like, I'm gonna travel, I wanna do all these things, and then I'd come up with a million excuses for why I can't do that, like college and marriage and like, I mean, legit excuses, but also I was scared. So, all right, cool. I'm gonna throw in, so this is a combination of one orange that has been zested and juiced. It's gonna be tossed in there. It smells so good in my kitchen right now, you guys. I love like citrus zest and citrus peel and like, I've got almonds, throwing them in here. Some of the ways I see my clients being held back is they have like these creative dreams. They like want to start some kind of like small side project and they tell themselves they can't because people are going to judge them or like whatever kind of thoughts we use to hold ourselves back, right? And which is sad, but I see it happening all the time. All right, so I've got this giant Costco sized thing of cinnamon. I'm throwing in half a teaspoon. Okay. I also, the recipe calls for mixed spice, which I think is a British thing. So I looked it up and I was like, what is mixed spice in the US? And it says use pumpkin pie spice. So hopefully that's like one and the same, but here we go. So about 1.5 of these. Lovely, okay. Some ground ginger. I'm a big fan of ginger. I don't know about y'all. Does anyone else just ever like wipe their little spoon thing off on their apron and call it good? Because I do that a lot. Okay. And then like an 1/8 teaspoon of cloves. I'm just gonna eyeball it because why not? Okay. Oh, it smells so good, you guys. It's like happy, fruity, spicy goodness. Okay. Then we get some alcohol going. We get some booze. It's port. I'm going to pour about 200 milliliters into this bad boy. You know it's nice port when it has a twist off. I spent like $6 on this, so. But I don't really like port, so I didn't want to spend money on something I wasn't going to drink. What about you guys? Do you like port? I don't. Okay. It was actually like one of the things I used to do at my old job when I was like an event planner is we'd have these wine tasting evenings, which were amazing. But I hated the end of the night because they'd bring out all the dessert wines, like the ports. And I would just like act like they were fine. I didn't like it. Okay. But I could see port being a really good thing to put in this mix. And then I'm gonna throw in some butter. Stick this bad boy on the stove. So it says, when you put it on the stove top, it just says heat gently, stirring until butter is melted for about 10 minutes. So I don't know what heat gently means. I'm guessing a low heat. When recipes aren't very great, I'm like, am I on a technical right now? I hope so. Are there hidden cameras? Oh, there's a real camera here. Cool. I'm gonna put this bad boy on here, and I'm just gonna introduce the first fear and while I'm mixing this up, and then I'm actually gonna let this sit for a while. I want it to like sit, cool down, get kind of sticky and gooey so it holds together really well when I make the mince pies later. So yeah, 3 fears that hold us back, and I kind of mentioned one of them already with why some of my clients don't start their creative projects or are afraid to like try new things or start a new business or travel somewhere new or move across the country, like all these things. Or even like, this was part of what stopped me from getting a divorce for a long time. Like, I was married, the relationship was not great, the marriage was definitely not great, and then I stayed in the marriage longer than I maybe should have for a couple of reasons. One, I like had this religious upbringing that told me like I couldn't ever get a divorce, and I was kind of stuck in that mindset. But the other part of it was that I was really scared of what other people would think of me. So this is fear number one, is the fear of what other people think and how that impacts our ability to do what we want. And that's a fear-based thought that's keeping us held back. Oh my goodness. It smells so good. I wish you guys could smell through the camera because it's like pretty nice. I'll do a little video with my phone. Okay. So here is kind of the problem we have with being afraid of what everyone thinks of us. I mean, right now we live in a time and age where we're all connected to so many people. If we think back even like 20 years ago, right? We all like think everyone's opinions are a big deal, and then we leave high school and we go have our own lives and we stop seeing what everyone else is doing, and there's a lot less judgment, there's a lot less comparison. We're not like worried what like Sally from our old science class thinks about our marriage choices. I don't know. Like all those things used to go away because we didn't keep following each other's lives. Like the people who mattered in our lives, they would stick around, great. But the people who were not as involved and weren't as important to us, they would like disappear, and that would be fine. And we'd have such a smaller window of people that we cared about impressing. And I'm not gonna say that like we don't need to worry about impressing people at all. We don't need to worry about like having community, because we do. It's part of our human nature. We need to have community. It's actually a big part of our fulfillment and staying happy and like avoiding depression and things like that, is having people in our lives. But what we work on in my program is really starting to identify whose opinions actually matter. Because if you get caught up in everyone's opinion, you're never going to do anything, because everyone has a different idea of what's right for your life. And you're always going to feel like you're letting someone down. So the first thing is to like really consider whose opinions matter. And that's probably a small window, and that's okay. That's actually a good thing. That's a blessing. And then like even within that window of people, certain people's opinions can matter about specific things. I'll give you an example. I have a friend, I really look up to her business, her like romantic life's all over the place. So if she comes to me and she's giving me advice on business things, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna take her opinion in because I really value the business she runs. Now, if she was to come to me and give me some unsolicited relationship advice, I would politely choose to not take that because I don't value the way she has her relationships. And so it's the same thing. I like really love my parents. I love my siblings and everything that they do. They're super stable, secure, financially independent people, and I love that about them. And their financial advice for me is like, get a 401k and start putting money into savings, which totally makes sense, totally get that. But I'm in a place in my life where I'm investing everything into my business, and that's okay too. So I don't need to take their like business financial advice because they don't run businesses. And so it's about just understanding that we can respect people and still choose what part of their opinions we choose to implement into our lives. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for hours. In fact, I have a whole session on it in my group program. But there's just some really basic things to consider, like whose opinions actually matter, and of those people who matter, are there elements of their opinions that you can remove yourself from caring about? Okay, I'm gonna let this sit, and then we'll come back later to make those mince pies. I've got my mince meat in the fridge, cooling down a bit more as I make this pastry dough by hand. Again, based on Paul Hollywood's recipe. So if you're watching on YouTube, I have all the things linked down below. So I'm just mixing in the sugar. And then I've got to dice up the butter so I can mix it in. I'm just gonna do a little bit of a stir before I mix by hand just to get this egg mixed in a little bit. And then I'll rub it together with my fingers. Ooh, as I make a mess. What's baking without making a little bit of a mess, huh? Okay. Also says to have a splash of water handy, so I've got that as well, but I'm just gonna rub this together. So yeah, with caring about what other people think, like one of the big things I suggest people do is like if you're really freaked out about it and you want to make a big life change, like just go off social media for a while. I know that sounds crazy because that's how we stay connected, but the people that you really care about, whose opinions matter in your life, like you'll talk to them outside of social media. So yeah, just like let that be okay. If you're really freaked out about what other people think, especially online, like just go offline for a while. That's totally okay. So as I rub all of this together, let's talk about the second fear I see come up with a lot of people, and that's just fear around your own abilities. So this is usually like when we have low self-esteem, low self-belief. The reason we're holding ourselves back is not because of anything other than our own beliefs in ourselves. So this is thoughts along the lines of like, well, I just don't know if I'm capable of doing it. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. I don't know if anyone will take me seriously. I don't know if I'm cut out for it. Like all of these different things, like I'm scared I won't be able to figure it out. I'm like scared of anything that's really related to your own abilities, right? Okay, I've just been like rubbing this out and realized I wasn't filming. So we're talking about our beliefs that we have in ourselves, right? And with this, part of the reason we don't believe in ourselves is because we're holding on to old stories, like lies that we've been fed in our past. So it might have been like a conversation you had with someone at one point where they said that you weren't really smart enough to figure something out. And like that's one conversation keeps subconsciously repeating in your head anytime you think about learning something new. Or maybe like you used to try new things all the time and then you would get freaked out and then you would quit. And so now you have this like belief that you're a quitter and that's why you can't start a new business because you're just going to quit it anyway and like that sort of thing. Or maybe you're scared to ask for a promotion because your old boss would always tell you how you weren't really good enough and that you shouldn't be asking for a promotion or like, you know, whatever the thoughts are. And it said to put a splash of water in this to get it to hold a bit better, but I might have just put too much of a splash of water in here. I might need to throw some more flour back in the mix. We'll see. So like that's part of it, is understanding that we've got these old stories that need to be rewritten, and that like that's just the thing you might need to look at for yourself and go, okay, like what of these old stories am I still holding on to? Where can I see them differently? Like if somebody at one point said that like you weren't very smart, you could be like, well, maybe they were judging me against themselves, or they were having a bad day and they said this to me, or maybe they're just purposefully trying to hurt my feelings and it's not really true and whatever. Or you can say, okay, like maybe I had a lot to learn back then, but I've learned a lot now and that no longer feels true for me. And you can say that. I am going to add a tiny bit more flour in here because I overdid the water, I think, just a bit. So that's one step, is you can like really look at how your old stories are still playing a role. But then the second thing is to just look at all the stories of where that wasn't true. Like, how can we find evidence of the contrary? So if you feel like you're not smart enough to figure it out, or you're not really good at learning new things, like look back into your past and find a time where, you know, something was happening, you had to learn something new, and you did it. Like, even if it's totally unrelated to the new thing that you're trying, look back and go, okay, like, I didn't know how to pay my utility bills and then I figured it out. I didn't know how to apply for a credit card, and then I figured it out. I didn't know how to work out at the gym, and then I figured it out. Like, you know, just give yourself a lot of evidence that you can figure things out and that you are capable, and that will make a huge difference. Okay, this looks pretty well mixed. I'm gonna throw it in the fridge for just a little bit. I think it says just, I'm supposed to have it in a shape. I don't know. Oh, wrap the pastry in a cling film and then put it, okay. This is gonna go in the fridge. My mincemeat's gonna come out of the fridge and I'm gonna like add some extra things to it. Okay, so here's my mincemeat, and all I need to do is add a finely cut apple to this. And he also asked for some tangerines. I don't have tangerines right now. I'm just gonna use mandarin oranges and call it good. Okay. And you know what? If you find that you're really hard on yourself, I give you like full permission to ask a friend. Like, can you help me like identify times in the past in which I figured it out? Or can you help me identify like the positive things about me? Like, I know it sounds silly, but I do this sometimes. I like call my friends and I'm like, okay, I just need a pep talk. I need you to remind me that I am awesome and I am capable, and like that's why we have close friends. It's like, you know, the friends who aren't going to judge you and they're going to be like, yes, and then can you give me a pep talk back? And I can be like, hell yeah. Another way I like to do this, and if, you know, this is an ongoing thing, so you'd have to like start doing this or maybe go back to old emails or old texts or old birthday cards or whatever, but I keep like an inventory of the nice things people have said to me. I just, especially for my business, but I also do it in my personal life where like I just keep like a little stash of handwritten notes. And then of course now I travel, I sometimes will just like take pictures of the notes, and I take screenshots of texts and screenshots of emails, and you know, when somebody has said something really nice about me, and then I can go back and look at those things and remind myself that like, hell yeah, people do think I'm great, I am capable. And I can look back at that list when I'm having a bad day. I also like to keep track of like the things that I think I'm doing really well. So again, like this is things that I've learned to do, but you know, keeping a going list of my accomplishments, even like small things. Like I started a podcast, like even if no one watches it, like that's still an accomplishment, or listens to it. It's still an accomplishment to have done it. Like right now I'm making mince pies. I've never done that before. That's an accomplishment. Like just throwing things on there, and don't be so caught up in like what is worthy of being put on an accomplishment list. It's purely for stroking your ego. Like I know that like as a yogi, I probably shouldn't be telling you to do things to make your ego bigger, but when you're struggling with low self-esteem, that's exactly what you need to do, is do things that are going to make you feel stronger and make you feel better about yourself. And that might be, you know, keeping an inventory. All right, I just dusted all these. I'm going to chop these up, chop up the apple pretty finely, and then we'll continue chatting. All right, and says to mix it in by hand. That's what I'm doing. It's still a little bit warm, so hopefully the apples are cold, so maybe mixing in will help a little bit. Oh my god, it smells so good. It smells delicious. Also, I don't know about you guys, I really love baking and cooking when I get my hands like in it. It's not great when you have nails because it's like always up in places. It's really good. It's really good. Okay. Okay, I also need some circle cuts. Says about 3¼ inches. I really appreciate this one. Also gives you American stuff. It makes it a lot easier. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna roll this out until it's about 1/8 of an inch. Cool. And I am now, 3½ inch. Okay, perfect. This one's actually perfect. I can't like press down on it, but that'll work really well. Okay. So also his recipe calls for like the typical full lid on top, and it's Christmas this week, and I really adore the stars on top. I think it's so cute and it's so like Christmassy. So I'm gonna do mine with a star cookie cutter instead of his suggestion of doing the full lid. So hopefully that's fine. Okay, so we've talked about 2 fears so far, one of them being what other people will think of you, and that's like a reason you hold yourself back from doing things. But this is a bit wet. I'll just throw more flour on top. So the other one, and this isn't like a specific fear, but more of like a specific pattern that happens in our mind, and we use this to keep us from doing things that we actually want to do, and that is the pattern of what if thinking. So, you know, you've got all these great ideas. You like, let's go with, you want to start a business. You like want to start even just like a side hustle, right? You want to start a side hustle, but the reason you don't get started is because you've got all these crazy what ifs in your head. Like, what if, I don't know, what if it doesn't work out? What if somebody at work finds out and the work doesn't like that I have another job and then I lose my job because of it, or like whatever kind of things your brain gets into. What if, I don't know. What if it takes up too much of my time and then I have to give it up? Or what if it does really, really well and then I have to like choose between that and my job? Or what if like somebody in my family finds out and makes fun of me for it? Or like what if it never, like all these what if things, guys, it will like keep you from ever getting started. Or like you might get started, but then another what if pops up and you're like, well, I should probably give that some energy. It's awful. Okay. I'm going to say that's good. I'm going to cut out some circles. So with what ifs, we really want to break the pattern. So this is less about like a specific fear, because all your what ifs, whatever your what ifs are, what my what ifs are, they're all going to be different, right? This is based on like our own stories, our own patterns of thinking. But the what if pattern is pretty consistent for most people that I work with. And that's what we want to fix, not the actual fears associated with the specific what ifs, but the what if pattern. So usually when I'm working with my clients on what ifs, or I'm working in my like group coaching session, we just like spend a whole session diving into our individual what ifs and like noticing the patterns and working through them. But for yourself, just understanding that like you doing the what if game is purely like your anxious diva brain trying to sabotage you from something that could be really great. And like the more that I have that attitude, I'm like, oh, okay, like let me walk through these what ifs and see where they're like silly and untrue, and then like let me change them up a little bit and do my own thought process and do what feels good for me. And that's really what it's all about, is it's just about recognizing that like, oh, you're anxious diva in your brain. I like to call mine anxious diva. You can call yours by a different name, or just like understand like this is the old school part of my brain that's understanding survival, and it's not seeing opportunity. It's only seeing like all the negatives and all the scary things. And you know, you can say, thank you, brain, for trying to protect me, but I don't really need your help with this. We're good here. And you can just kind of tell your anxiety brain to like kind of F off in some ways. So that's part of it, is you just like recognize like, oh, okay, this is a fear-based pattern in my brain. It's like not as real as I think it is. That like just eliminates a ton of it from the very beginning. You're just like, oh, okay, I notice this what's happening here. My brain's gone down a fear rabbit hole. I can choose to believe that any of these what ifs are real or not. And just like having that kind of authority over your brain can feel really powerful. It feels so good. And then, yeah, from there you can just say, okay, let me see how I can work through these fears in a way that feels good and feels like I'm not just ignoring them. Because I think I was actually looking up videos on like how other like therapists specifically and like psychologists tell you to deal with the what ifs. And a lot of them were like, just tell your brain that that's not possible, or just tell your brain that like we'll cross over that bridge when we get there, and that sort of thing. And I can see where that would be helpful if you weren't such an anxious diva. But I'm a major anxious diva, and like me telling my brain to just like, oh, just stop thinking about that, like it's not helpful. It actually just like pisses me off a lot, and my brain doesn't like, it doesn't stick. My brain's like, nope, that doesn't feel right to me, and then it doesn't work. So what I suggest doing instead is like understanding again like how your brain works and being nice and being gentle and going, okay, let's sit down with each of these fears, each of these what ifs, and let's sit with each one. Okay, what's all the things I think are going to go wrong? Let's sit with each one. And I'm going to write them all down, give them each a little bit of energy. And then this is where I feel empowered is I look at each fear and I go, okay, if this actually were to happen, how would I deal with it? For every scenario that my anxious diva has dreamed up that could possibly go wrong in any given situation, I can find a way that I would handle it, right? I can like look at that and go, okay, cool. I see where that's like a possibility. And if it happens, here's what I'll do. And then I feel like less freaked out by the what ifs. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can confidently say that I can handle these what ifs, even if it would be like a terrible situation, right? None of these things are great. None of these things I want are, like they're not fun what ifs. It's not like, yeah, I can handle it and it'll be freaking awesome. Like, no, some of the scenarios might suck. And I'm still like, okay, but at the end of the day, I'm still like living, breathing, fine. So that feels really good. That feels empowering to be able to sit down with each of my fears instead of trying to like completely ignore them, because I'm not really a fan of that. I can sit with each one and go, okay, cool. Here's how I'd work through these terrible what ifs. But then here's the fun part, because we don't want to be stuck in that like fear energy only. Also, I'm pretty sure that most of these bases are like way too thick, but that's fine. Okay, so I was telling you about the fun part. So after you get through all the like scary what ifs and you're like, okay, like I see where I can handle these. I'm not going to die. It won't be the end of the world. It will suck, but I'll work through it, whatever. This is what we forget to do. We forget to look at the positive what ifs, you guys. Like, why is it that you want to make these changes in the first place? Why is it that you want to like try these new things? What is the dream that you have? And ask yourself, what would happen if it all went right? Right? We've focused so much on like what happens when things go wrong. But what happens if it goes right? What if it happens if it goes better than right? What happens if it's like way beyond your wildest dreams? And spend some time reflecting on that and putting energy into the positive things as well. Like, let's spend time in the what ifs of like, what if it's way, way better than you ever anticipated? Not what if all the negative things, but what if all the positive things as well? And like, let that be like a really fun way to play with that part of your brain and know, okay, like if we're going to go down the scary what if rabbit hole, we better go down the happy what if rabbit hole as well. And like, let that be part of the journey. Let that be really fun. Okay, I'm going to start filling these up. I'm like spending so much time in the kitchen today. It says to stuff these in pretty good, like 3/4 of the way full. I just feel like I'm gonna have so much filling left over. We'll see. Shove in here, happy little pies. Okay, I'm so glad I did a perfectionism video the first time because it like holds me accountable to like not being a perfectionist in all of these other ones I'm doing. Then it says to sprinkle them with a bit of sugar. So I'll do that and then bake for about 20 minutes. So, great. All right. And then I'll throw them in. Let me just do a quick little video thing. Echo. Set a timer for 20 minutes. They're coming out of the oven and they smell so good. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna let these cool for just a couple minutes and then I'll transfer them onto like a drying rack or cooling rack and then I'll dust them with a little bit of powdered sugar and they're good to go. I definitely overstuffed some of them, like that is obvious, but I'm sure they'll taste good. All right, so these definitely don't look perfect by any means, but that's okay. I think they're a little bit over baked, but this part always makes me nervous. All right, got one. Oh, okay, they don't actually look too overcooked. Sweet. Okay. So remember how I was worried about overfilling them? Couple of them toppled over or just bubbled over. Just a tiny bit though. I'm like pretty okay with that. Most of these look great. In fact, I would have probably like shoved a bit more filling in some of these if I could have. So yeah, just kind of closing out some of those thoughts on fear. Like if you notice that you've got all these big dreams that you keep feeling stuck on, keep feeling like there's so much you want to do and you just hold yourself back, try to figure out what the fear thoughts are that are causing you to stay playing small. And once you can identify what those fears are, you can start doing the work to clear them out of the way, which is like an important step. Finish these up and go have some cocktails with my parents. Sunday afternoon cocktails. Post baking. All of these overfilled actually, but that's okay. Just gonna go over the top with some powdered sugar so they look nice and cute. So if you are like ready for 2021 to be the year that you stop playing small, that you start chasing after your dreams, my next group program called Free to Rebel is launching at the end of January, and it is all about like clearing out the fears, getting a hold of your anxiety, feeling like in charge of your stress and that sort of thing. So if that feels like something that's right up your alley, definitely reach out for information on that for the application. It's such a fun program. It's 8 weeks with other like badass women who are working through similar things. So I think part of the reason people love it so much is you do get that group dynamic, so you don't feel like you're so alone. I think that's actually what shocks people the most is when we're caught up in our fear, we think we're like the only ones living in it. We think we're the only ones who are dealing with it, and it's not true. And so joining a group program can give you a bunch of other people who are going through really similar things, and it can make it feel a lot less like you're all on your own and that no one really understands, and you're like, suddenly you're like, oh my God, so many people understand. I'm definitely not alone in this. And that just can give you a really cool way to like step into things. Or if you're like, I think I've got the fear tackled, I need to get like firm in my own self-belief. I also do my one-on-one program, so reach out. We can connect about which one might be the best for you. Otherwise, try it.
I'm scared.
It's so good. It's all citrusy and happy. Tastes like Christmas. And
Tastes like Christmas trees and wrapping paper.
is that good?
Pretty good.
Hey, what do you think?
Oh, that's really yummy.
So good. Tastes like Christmas.
Mm-hmm.